We'll start over with the quarterback position here. My number one team to target is Dallas and Dak Prescott. They've got the easiest schedule right now, and they have a juicy playoff schedule, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But with matchup with Carolina this week, middle of the road 19th, but then you got Washington, third best. Seattle, 17th, shootout potential there. Philadelphia, fifth most points allowed to QBs. You get Buffalo week 15 in the fantasy playoffs, not the best matchup, but definitely shootout style feel. Miami and Detroit, both top half matchups for Dak as well. He is absolutely cooking right now. 360 yards per game across his last three. 12 touchdowns in those last three as well. That's not going to make Dak cheap to acquire, but I actually bumped Dak ahead of Patrick Mahomes in my rest of season big board. You can find that at rotostreetjournal.com, given that Mahomes has one of the worst schedules among quarterbacks and Dak has the best and is absolutely cooking right now. So maybe you could move a Tua, one of the worst schedules. Maybe you could do that for Dak. Whatever it might take, I really think Dak's going to be worth this. He's been the quarterback 3 or higher in 4 straight matchups. They have now the 3 highest games with pass rate over expectation that they've had since 2022. So definitely give Dak a look if you are desperate for a quarterback that could really turn your season around and carry you into the fantasy goal line. He looks like that kind of hero stretch run guy. Brock Purdy, my number 2 schedule for winning now at quarterbacks. They get Tampa Bay, second most points allowed this week. Seattle, another potential shootout. Philadelphia, fifth most points. Seattle again, another shootout. And then you got Arizona in week 15 to kick off your fantasy playoffs. Baltimore in week 16 looks brutal. The worst matchup for quarterbacks in that semifinal week for Brock Purdy. So I recommend if you can somehow find a guy to pair up with him, maybe even Will Levis, something that you could potentially stream in week 16. I definitely recommend that. But then you get Washington, third most points. 2 of his 3 playoff matchups are against bottom 7 matchups. Great stuff for Brock Purdy here. 11th in passing yards, 9th in QB fantasy points. The guy is fantasy goodness. We keep moving through, and you got like New Orleans has the 3rd easiest, but I don't care about Derek Carr. Deshaun Watson, no longer. Cleveland did have the 4th easiest rest of season schedule. That's not going to help anyone else out. So I actually gravitate now to Josh Dobbs as my next quarterback to target, especially if you are an ultimate need to win right now. He gets Denver, 8th most points allowed to QBs, and then Chicago, the most points allowed to quarterbacks across his next 2 games. Then you have to deal with the bye week, and the rest of the season schedule after that isn't the best. But this guy has now 25 points in back-to-back games since joining the Vikings, his 3rd straight game with 25 points overall. The quarterback 6 right now. If you take out week 1, that dud where he was just thrust into action, Dobbs is absolutely feasting. He's got 40 or more rush yards in 7 of 10 games. It's going to continue. And then you add Justin Jefferson in here. Dobbs has all the makings of a league winner, especially if you need to win right now. He is a guy to go out and get. The only guy I want to shout out is Jared Goff, a fringe top 10 rest of season schedule. Chicago this week, most points allowed. And he does get Green Bay, New Orleans, 2 tougher matchups, but then Chicago and Denver in 14 and 15 with shootouts between Minnesota and Dallas coming up there to close out his playoffs. So a really nice schedule there for Jared Goff as well. So those are some guys to buy. If you need to win right now, those are the ones to look at. In terms of who has some of the worst schedules in the NFL, you got Trevor Lawrence and the Jags coming in with the 29th worst schedule here. Tennessee, Houston, Cincinnati, none of them are top half matchups besides Houston. And then in the fantasy playoffs, Cleveland, the 2nd worst. Baltimore, the worst. You get Tampa Bay in week 16. So somehow, if you're still alive with Trevor Lawrence, you do get a juicy week 16 matchup. Hey, maybe you can pair him and Brock Purdy and have those guys really anchor your playoff strategy. Then Carolina, 20th in terms of quarterback points allowed. Not a great spot for Trevor Lawrence, who has only 1 game above 18 fantasy points all year. His highest quarterback ranking is QB8. I think you can flat out drop Trevor Lawrence at this point. Now, this is, and when we talk about selling, like I get that strength of schedule, it's not the end-all be-all. And the fact that Justin Herbert and the Chargers have the 2nd or 3rd worst schedule among all QBs, that gives you a little bit of a pause. Green Bay, one of the bottom 5 matchups. Baltimore, the bottom matchup. New England, middle of the road. Denver, solid, and they get them twice. But then weeks 15 and 16 are your fantasy playoffs. The Raiders are a bottom 8 matchup. Buffalo's a bottom 3 matchup. Not great, but you got to realize that this team is throwing the ball at an insane clip. Herbert is the quarterback 4 right now in fantasy. So only sell if you can get a huge haul. Maybe you can move Herbert and get Dak plus a wide receiver or a position of need, for example. We're not, again, and now next one's going to be Joe Burrow. He has a crap schedule too, but we're not saying that you have to sell them because they have a tough matchup in week 16, week 17. You should be selling them high if you possibly can to maybe get one of these better matchups lined up. So Chargers 30th, Joe Burrow 31st here, gets Buffalo this week, or Baltimore rather, on Thursday Night Football coming up tomorrow. Great Thursday night game, finally. Pittsburgh 22nd, so Baltimore again dead last. Gets Jacksonville. That's the only green matchup, though, that Joe Burrow has the rest of the season. He gets Indy. That's actually not too scary. Minnesota's fine. But then in the week 16 and 17, semifinals and finals, gets Pittsburgh again, bottom 6 matchup for quarterbacks. And then Kansas City's actually been a top 5 team against the pass this year. Got a shootout feel to those, though. And Burrow's finally getting healthy. Chase is looking good. It's again, sell high. We're not saying just sell to sell them, but if you can sell high and get a huge haul for Burrow right now, you can get a huge haul for Justin Herbert. Those schedules are concerning. One guy I would be pretty intrigued to move, though, is Tua Tagovailoa and any Dolphins. Maybe not Tyreek Hill. We know how much of a game changer he is, but he has actually the worst rest of season schedule and worst fantasy playoff schedule. The Raiders, the Jets, both bottom 8 matchups. Gets Washington in week 13, does Tua. Great matchup. That's the only good matchup he gets. Tennessee, Jets again, Dallas, and then Baltimore, the worst matchup in week 17. So Tua in a really tough spot. He just always feels like a ticking time bomb too with injuries. So just something to consider for fantasy playoffs there. Now talking about the fantasy playoffs here, the easiest schedules are the Saints, Titans, and Giants. That really does not give you much. I mean, maybe Will Levis, you pluck him off the waiver wire and see if he can evolve his role. He had that 4-touchdown smashing debut, but since then has not even cracked 10 fantasy points or thrown a single touchdown. So I don't have a ton of hope for him, but it does have, again, the second easiest schedule among quarterbacks. But I did want to shout out the Cowboys again, the 4th easiest schedule. And one other team and one other quarterback that I really think is worth going after is Kyler Murray, who has, according to The Athletic, Jake Seeley did a great adjusted. Again, we talked about schedule adjusted points. They have the easiest playoff schedule among quarterbacks, given that week 16. So week 15, they get a date with the San Fran 49ers. Not the best of matchups, but honestly, when you can beat them is through the pass. But then they get Chicago and then Philadelphia, 2 teams that are giving up top 5 in terms of points, schedule adjusted points to quarterbacks, giving Kyler Murray the single best playoff schedule. And he looked as healthy as ever. It's nimble, escaping the pocket, evading tacklers. He looked so damn good. So Kyler Murray, he also has a top 10 rest of season schedule there, right around the fringe at QB9. So top 9 quarterback rest of season, top quarterback schedule in the fantasy playoffs. Between him, between Dak, I think those are the guys you go after. If you somehow think you can make a move for an elite QB, well, Philadelphia gets the 10th easiest schedule among signal callers here. So Jalen Hurts, if I'm going to try to make a push for a Mahomes, a Josh Allen, whoever, it's Jalen Hurts who gets my vote if you're going to sell the farm to get an elite quarterback. So that is our strength of schedule breakdown for QBs. 5 quarterbacks to buy, some quarterbacks to consider selling there. It's tough to get Herbert and Burrow and Tua. These are some top 6 quarterbacks this year. Not, again, fully advocating that you got to sell these guys, but sell high is what we're getting at here. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.